I've always been concerned about the nature of things. As a little girl, I wondered about the sudden appearance of mold on old bread. I remember asking the question, how did it get on the bread? I was told they are unseen, ever-present, friendly foes. So I decided to learn more by becoming a microbial biotechnologist. Now I have answers to my questions and a permanent license to play with microbes. By that, I mean to study the role of microbes, bacteria, fungi, microalgae in the environment and in natural processes. I've focused more on the positive attributes of these infinitesimal yet influential players in our environment. Their ability to make yogurt out of milk, make penicillin out of mold, or to convert waste into useful products or less harmful substances. Important lessons that I've learned from my studies of microbes are patience and the power of numbers. Because microbial activity can be slow, but also fast, if more are at work. Often my role as a microbiologist is to interfere in microbial processes to make it faster and finer. However, interference can sometimes be disruptive to connections. For example, the connection that involves us, the environment, and the processes that allows the earth to sustain life. The levels of carbon dioxide or CO2 in the atmosphere has increased above the norm in recent years. CO2 is a greenhouse gas, and greenhouse gases are gases that traps heat in the atmosphere to prevent the earth from freezing. Therefore, increased levels of CO2 in the atmosphere means a warmer earth, and it's been implicated in climate changes that is manifested as extreme weather events such as heat waves, flood, or drought. So, the CO2 level in the atmosphere is regulated by plants, and so the atmospheric CO2 level is absorbed by plants and converted to food using this sunlight energy. Animals and humans eat the plant. They convert the food from plant to CO2 that goes back into the atmosphere, or that is stored as carbon in the ground, as fossils or fossil fuels. Some of this carbon in the ground is also released back into the atmosphere as CO2 through events such as volcanic eruptions. So the level of CO2 in the atmosphere is regulated by mainly plants and natural phenomena, allowing this cycle to operate endlessly, efficiently, and balanced. This was the story of the carbon cycle until the industrial age. with the industrial age, when there were increases in human activities in construction, mining, and agriculture. This led to the release of carbon that is stored underground back into the atmosphere more than the subsequent events in the carbon cycle can handle. So, what we are doing is actually removing plants that can absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere through deforestation for urban development and for agriculture, and releasing more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere from industrial emissions or vehicular exhaust. And this increases the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So, what should we do? Doing away with the comfort that came with industrialization is nearly impossible. We have become so used to these comforts that it feels catastrophic to suddenly change. Because the products and services from industrialization are deeply connected with our survival. What do you think will happen if suddenly we are unable to fly to that desired destination within hours, miles away? Or how would we survive the winter months without fossil energy? By burning wood? Now that we are aware of the potential risk of the imbalance in CO2 cycle, we are looking for desperate solutions and quick fixes to suppress the climate change force. There are numerous government policies, agreements, and laws to encourage a change in attitude in order to drastically reduce the amount of greenhouse gases that we release into the atmosphere. Improbable suggestions to achieve this cut in emissions has also been proposed. So many environmental groups are pushing for the total shutdown of industries, especially the oil and gas industry, forgetting that the product and services from this industry are the pillars of our society, and that alternatives cannot replace but only supplement fossil energy. Others want to do away with cattle because their bops and fats release methane, a more potent greenhouse gas that speeds up the process of climate change. Some have suggested putting plant genes in humans so we, like plants, can absorb CO2 from the environment. There is also the subtle suggestion by climate change experts to reduce farming and, in essence, food production, because more CO2 is released from the soil with increase in land use. But I also want to tell you about innovative technologies, such as carbon capture and sequestration underground, which presents a quick way of removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. And it might be critical to reducing the atmospheric level of carbon, and also the global temperatures below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. Having said that, there is also the fear that artificial storage of CO2 in form of gas or liquid in the ground may create climate catastrophe by eventually erupting or exploding back into the atmosphere. Trying to find artificial solution to the increased level of CO2 in the atmosphere will be inappropriate in the long run. This is going to be tantamount to repeating the same mistake and perpetrating the interference. So, what do we do? Let's take a clue from the CO2 cycle itself. What are the primary users of CO2? Plants. Earlier this year, satellite data gathered over a period of 35 years by a team of experts revealed that there are more leaves on plants in 25 to 50% of the Earth's vegetated lands because of increase in CO2 level in the atmosphere. So this means increased level of CO2 in the atmosphere is enabling plants to grow better and then use more CO2 or absorb more CO2 from the atmosphere. If we are going to fix the connections between the events of the carbon cycle that we disrupted, we will need to build systems and processes that will endure indefinitely, or, as we like to say, are sustainable. One such process or system is looking at plants or plant-like organisms like microalgae. Microalgae, like plants, they can use CO2, sunlight, nutrients, and water to grow. However, they can grow faster and absorb more CO2 than plants. They are frequently found or more often found in aquatic systems, and I'm sure you all remember them from the toxic algae blooms that in rivers that prevent people from swimming or kill the fish in the water. They can also be used for animal food. They can be used as human food and also for biofuels. They need less land to grow, so when they are grown in closed systems, so they don't compete with crop cultivation. All these reducing the need for fossil energy or deforestation. The possibility of growing microalgae, more microalgae to take more CO2 from the atmosphere is being looked at by many groups of researchers across the globe. But they have been delayed and doubted because of the slowness of this process. Currently, I investigate the role of microalgae and how they can be grown better to absorb CO2 from the environment by making them grow better on the sunlight and also reducing the amount of water and nutrients that are needed to grow them. In my research group at the college, we've developed systems and nutrients that allow them to grow better on the sunlight. And we have also been able to recycle water and residual nutrients, all advancing the achievement of the sustainable production of microalgae. A positive interference, therefore, will be growing more algae to capture more carbon. My experience has not been without challenges, but it's been exciting. Results are not always positive, but that's normal in the research and development field of which I'm part of. My team is learning new things every day and gaining better understanding of how to grow algae better. Finally, I'm using the opportunity that I have to find sustainable solutions to the problem of climate change. And I've learned that this process can be slow, but I've also learned that it can be made faster if we all pitch in our part by making good environmental choices, support research and development of alternatives, and also by becoming more reasonable in our demands. This process is very important to the sustenance of our system, of our health, so we can all enjoy our time on it. What will you do